Today on GreenCars, the podcast, we take a look back at all the amazing tech the EV and hybrid world had to offer this year with our guest, Strom, and look forward to what's coming in 2025. Plus, I get to drive a pretty rare Polestar. It all starts right now. Welcome to GreenCars, the podcast, where we talk about all things involving hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and electric vehicles. I'm Trish Glose.
And I'm Dave Nichols. Before we bring on Chase, let's take a look at some of the fastest selling cars today. Trish, these are cars that move off dealer lots the quickest.
And just so we're clear, these are the most popular makes and models with the buying public, right?
That is exactly right,
Okay.
yeah. These are the top 10 fastest selling cars today. Across America, around 52 million new and used cars are sold each year. Interestingly, EVs take the greatest number of days to sell, while hybrids sell the fastest.
Well, this podcast has taught me I'm not surprised by those numbers, actually. I understand that on average, it takes 54 days to sell a new gas-powered car at dealer lots compared to, listen to this, 70.6 days to sell an EV, 49.5 days to sell a new hybrid vehicle or a hybrid vehicle.
And speaking of hot-selling fuel-efficient hybrids, 6 of the top 20 fastest-selling new vehicles are hybrids, while 8 of the top 20 fastest-selling used vehicles are hybrids.
So as of right now, we want to give you a list of the top 10 fastest-selling cars in the country. I love a good top 10 list. It reminds me of David Letterman, right?
That's right. In the number 10 spot is the faithful Toyota Corolla, a 4-door sedan or hatchback that averages 28.5 days on dealer lots, and it's offered in a hybrid version.
Nice. At number 9, we find the popular 3-row SUV known as the Toyota Highlander. It's only on dealer lots an average of 28.3 days, and all-wheel drive is standard.
At number 8, Cadillac's luxury 3-row Escalade SUV spends an average of 26.2 days at the dealer, and Super Cruise hands-free driving is now standard.
At number 7 on this list, Toyota's Grand Highlander includes 3 rows, an extended body, and is perfect for big families. Powertrains include 2 different hybrid options. It hangs around dealer lots an average of 24.4 days.
The mid-size Chevy Colorado pickup truck is at number 6. It has a max towing capacity of 7,700 pounds and is on dealer lots an average of 23.8 days.
At number 5 on the list, GMC Canyon is the mechanical twin to the Chevy Colorado. It's quick to leave dealerships within 23 days.
Yep. Number 4 is America's most fuel-efficient minivan, the Toyota Sienna Hybrid. It includes a refrigerator, a built-in vacuum cleaner, and it rolls off of dealer lots in 22.9 days on average.
I don't need to ask why, because this makes total sense. A fridge, really?
Yeah.
And a vacuum?
Yes.
It just needs my glove box microwave.
It needs that terribly, and we're going to work on that.
We'd be done. We would be done. Number 3, we find the plush and attractive Land Rover Range Rover. For 2025, an upgraded Meridian sound system is standard, and it averages just 19.3 days on dealer lots.
Second place goes to the high-end Mercedes-Benz G-Class off-road SUV. It's only found in dealerships an average of 18.7 days. This beast has a 416 horsepower, twin-turbo V8, and 4-wheel drive.
It is a beast. And that brings us to number 1 fast-selling vehicle in the country. Drum roll, please, Dave. It's the Toyota Grand Highlander Hybrid. It leaves dealers within 14.2 days on average.
Amazing.
Wow.
And it's available with 2 hybrid powertrains spread over 3 trim levels. The XLE trim gets an EPA estimated 36 miles per gallon combined.
Okay, well, this is not bad at all. You can see the entire article at lithia.com Research Center under car buying. Dave, there's a few things I want to unpack here. There were a lot of Toyotas on this list. What does that say? What does that tell you?
Generally speaking, whenever there's a top 10 list, in the last few years, you're going to find a lot of Toyotas and a lot of Hondas because they take the cake for being extremely reliable and cost-effective vehicles.
Do you also find that these two car manufacturers are listening to consumers and giving them what they want when it comes to hybrid or EVs?
Well, yes. And Honda, as we know from speaking to some of their designers, they move very quickly to follow what consumer needs are. They respond very quickly.
Well, just looking at this list, if I have a big family and I'm looking to save some money, and I want to be a little bit better for the environment, right? Maybe looking at a hybrid. I mean, that Toyota Highlander, we're talking about 3-row SUV. You can pack a whole bunch of crap in that car.
Yep.
And then also, what was the other one? The Toyota's Grand Highlander, which also includes 3 rows and extended body, perfect for big families. And these are hanging on dealer lots less than a month.
Right. And if you were looking at the top 20, you would find things like the Toyota RAV4 in there, which is an excellent vehicle. It's just not quite as big as the Highlander.
Right. And then how does price play a role in this top 10 list?
It's interesting because people, first of all, keep their vehicles longer than they used to. The average is like 12 years or something like that. And so you're looking at something that's going to be part of your family for a long time. People don't mind spending a little more if they feel the value is there.
Okay. And then I have one more question before we move on. Do you think this list plays a role? Let's say I'm looking for a vehicle. Am I going to look at this list to go, well, that's not hanging on the lot. I want one of those.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I think it's just good as a consumer to have this kind of information.
Sure.
So you know what's there. And it used to be that if you wanted a specific trim level or color, it was damn near impossible to get. You'd call up and say, hey, do you have one of these on the lot? No, we don't.
Right.
Well, how can I get one? Well, we've got one in Dubuque, Iowa that we can send to you. I mean, it's getting easier.
Well, and we're getting more impatient, aren't we?
Yeah.
We go to the dealership. We want the car we want to drive it off today.
Yeah.
Essentially.
That's a very American thing.
It is.
Want it right now, just like my latte.
It's a very Trish Glose thing too, I think. I feel like looking at this list, the research has been done for me a little bit, right? I can look at this and go, okay, so other people out there, they're buying up these cars pretty quickly.
Right.
So, well, once again, if you want to see this entire article, it's at lithia.com, Research Center under car buying. A lot of good information here. Next up, we'd like to bring in this episode's guest, right? Mr. Chase Strom.
Yes, indeed.
Chase, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's so great to be back. Thanks, Trish and Dave, for having me on again.
Well, as we come to the end of 2024, we thought we'd bring in our expert on all things EV. What are we? Wonder Kid?
Yes.
Wonder?
No.
Wizard. The Wizard.
Yeah.
All things EV related for Chase's take on the year in review, as well as, what may be coming up in 2025. So Chase, once again, it's so nice to have you with us today.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Great to be speaking with you both and really excited for today's topics.
Yes, and what we're going to do first is look back at this year of 2024. Give us your review of where things are at, or we're at. In the future, we'll be looking back and going, that was 2024. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
What happened in the world of EVs and hybrids in 2024?
Yeah, this was a really interesting year. I would argue, I think there's been a lot of headlines, especially about like electric vehicle sales maybe not being what people had expected. But honestly, if you look at the numbers, the bigger story really is about how much the overall automotive market has actually shrunk this past year. And the positive in that is both battery electric vehicles and hybrids are still actually growing. The difference is they're not just growing as fast as had been predicted. And we're just, honestly, it's really been the last few months even, we're seeing the fallout from some of the issues from the traditional legacy automakers around domestically the production goals that had been set at the beginning of the year, which even going into the year were a bit bearish and now have kind of had to be reset a couple times, forecasting kind of lower numbers overall. It just seems like it's been a bit of a ping pong game with these numbers. One month it's been up a little bit more. I think, if I remember right, September actually wasn't too bad, but it's just been kind of a wild year for automotive in general. And I think in some ways, if you were to look back at 2024 and what made it unique, I don't think it's just an electric vehicle story. I think it is just like we've had a pretty long decade of really big growth from these companies and a lot of really expensive, or I guess we shouldn't say expensive, but definitely the average cost of cars being sold has gone up. While that's been really good for a lot of the auto industry and there's been kind of record profits and all this stuff, with the economy where it's at, it's just really kind of catching a lot of these automakers off guard that some of the vehicles they had produced that were really high profit, but maybe low production numbers aren't selling like they used to. And then there's just been some interesting things. I think if we look specifically at the EV space, there's now a lot more electric vehicle trucks on the market. So consumers have more choice for what they want to buy. Everything, obviously, from the Tesla Cybertruck that's kind of just owned the headlines for like the last few years is finally for sale. And then you also have kind of the new GMC Denali's finally being delivered. And that's a pretty cool electric vehicle as well. Those both are in that higher price range, unfortunately. But I think it's been kind of a wild year to see how many more options there are now in the electric vehicle space.
Interesting. And I think, Chase, for me at least, I'm a newbie when it comes to the EV world. But it seems like this past year, it was hard to keep up at times, right? Like it felt like there was something going on in the EV world every single day and changing every single day. Did you see that too?
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, a lot of it you're 100% right. There was a lot going on. And then what was really challenging, I think, for anybody, especially even someone in the industry who pays a lot of attention to this, it was really just hard to find the facts. There are a lot of headlines about this happening, that happening. But then when you start kind of peeling it back, there, like I said, there were definitely some things that really kind of shook up and changed this past year. But a lot of the time, I think, especially the first half of the year, there were so many headlines about the electric vehicle space, like crashing. I guess maybe that's a bad pun, but the numbers weren't what were expected. And when you look at it, pretty much all of the automakers were growing. It was just Tesla wasn't growing as fast as they had previously. And so all these analyst numbers that had expected them to continue doing like this 50% growth were kind of off. And then it's really in the second half of this year, you're seeing some of that fallout also getting to the higher priced and more legacy combustion vehicles as well. So it's been a wild year for sure. And you're right. There's always something changing between a headline about whether it be a new vehicle on its range and efficiency to some sort of drama going at a automaker. And then, I mean, it seems like it was a while ago, but yeah, we also had all the UAW union things going on. So it just seemed like there was so much going on in very different facets of the automotive industry. And it was a lot to try and keep up on.
Well, I was just going to say it's okay for Tesla because now he's going to make everybody who has a smartphone buy one of his robots, which I had not set into my budget for next year. I wasn't ready for that, so I have to come up with an extra $40,000 or something. Also, yes, you do. Also, if you want facts, I mean, GreenCars, the podcast, is a fact-based
That's true.
Packed.
You have guests like
facts.
me on.
We're packed with facts. Well, obviously an amazing year for hybrid and electric cars. And thanks for that rundown, Chase. But we also know you really like our ongoing segment, Keeping It Current, where we share, some comments with our guests on social media and just see how you respond.
No, it's always entertaining. And I get it. Like I said, it's really hard to keep up with what's going on. And so it's really easy to find either out-of-date facts or kind of misinformation out there that makes it easier for the consumer to be, unfortunately, just not as well informed as they used to be.
Let's do Keeping It Current.
Let's do. And now we're going to get your comments on the comments.
On Facebook, Keith Roach Heyman says, imagine if all the emergency squads and line repair trucks headed for Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas after Hurricane Helene were all EVs, and they needed to be recharged so they can give medical attention and repair the electrical system. And speaking of the recent hurricanes, Richard Myers says, here's another comment for you. A good example is the flooding all along North Carolina coast lately. There weren't any EVs on the roads. Most charging stations were underwater. And remember, people with EV cars wouldn't have been able to evacuate even if they wanted to. Take a moment, let that sink in. Chase, what do you think about those two comments?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. Coincidentally, I happen to know a few people who were impacted by it who also drive EVs. And it's really obviously sad what happened, but they seem to be fine. And I think there's a few different things to kind of unpack there. I think the first comment's kind of interesting when he talks about if all these kind of support things going in were EVs. And to be honest with you, we are starting to see a lot more vehicles be powered, be electric vehicles or even hybrids. And there's a pretty good reason for that. Obviously, we're starting to see even these massive, traditionally have been sometimes diesel generators, but even you get now these massive, essentially they put them on the back of a semi truck and it's a massive battery that can really support a lot of these systems, sometimes for up to a week at these like kind of emergency sites. So I think we're even seeing that being electrified, and there's actually a lot of advantages to that. I know I think when people think diesel, they're like, oh, that's a downside. But I mean, a diesel generator is actually really, as far as a combustion vehicle goes, is really efficient because it's just staying at that same rate as opposed to like a diesel vehicle going down the road that has to go up and down, up and down. So even in that case, it's not a bad thing to generate electricity. But yeah, we're seeing these really cool things. I know Tesla, Porsche, I don't think Porsche did for this one, but all these different, GM has them too. All these different automakers are actually making these massive batteries that you can just put on semis and send them down to these emergency things. So you can have massive amounts of power like immediately. So I do actually think we'll see a lot of that electrified, just because in some ways that is better when you know you have something that'll last you for sure a week. And that kind of gives you that timeline to get the grid back on or even whatever you need. Whereas there have been a lot of issues with getting diesel or other gas things in these emergencies. And I think one of the other things just you saw online so much was just the fact that a lot of people were talking about EV chargers being down. And yeah, some of them were down. But I think what's really factual about this too, to kind of look at the other side, was so are gas stations. I mean, at the end of the day, they're powered by electricity too. There are motors that are pumping that gas into your car. And what is really cool about electrification for a lot of these vehicles is you're now getting software in vehicles that are automatically moving your emergency preparedness from being reactive to much more proactive. And there's systems that, so you can proactively charge the battery, that you can like send a notification to people saying, hey, we sense that there might be a power outage or stuff like that. So it really makes the experience of owning an electric vehicle, I think, a lot better, especially if you're just, you know how your product works, so that it can be charged and everything and just be ready to go, not even deal with the gas stations. And right now there's so many great vehicles that can go pretty easily 300 miles that everyone I knew was able to easily get to safety and not even have to deal with charging. So I think there's a lot of social media hypothesis versus reality. And I'm not always a fan of use anecdote, but the personal anecdotes I know of, the people were able to get up plenty easily and find to other areas and not even have to kind of bypass a lot of the traffic and issues that others ran into at gas stations. And then I think there's what's just really cool about it is, especially if you have solar, even a home battery, it does give you a lot of resiliency and the ability to kind of choose more proactively, and just gives you, I think electrification gives you a lot more options. It does require an investment for sure upfront, but we're seeing those prices come down really quickly too. And I think it's really easy to look backward, and now looking even in this past year and looking forward, you're just seeing not only the prices, but how quickly the technology is advancing for this compared to like traditional technologies that have been around. And there's a reason a lot of these companies are implementing and going with this technology. It is a benefit and it is an improvement. So I think we'll continue to see it. And I think the more that is out there and gets seen by people, it will start changing people's opinions. And I think that's true with just electric vehicles in general. It's usually people have all sorts of ideas going into it, and then they get into one and drive one around. They realize, oh, this actually does work really well with my lifestyle.
Interesting.
Yeah, and you know, we talked last year a lot about range anxiety. And certainly trying to get out of Florida before the hurricane hit probably brought up a lot of the old range anxiety fears. But we get a lot of comments about range anxiety, and at SunPowered on YouTube tells us those who drive Teslas don't have range anxiety at all. Once the fast charging network is fully built out and all manufacturers sell EVs with NACS connectors, no one will ever have range anxiety again. What do you say to that, Chase?
I disagree, but whatever.
I think there's, I mean, to be honest with you, the conversation I have a lot with a lot of people this past year hasn't really been range anxiety. It's been charger anxiety. And I think that is definitely an area where Tesla obviously has just kicked butt and owned it. There are still some challenges around the actual hardware. Like if you have a 400 volt battery versus an 800 volt style vehicle, they've been doing a good job of improving that. And essentially what it means is if you have an 800 volt vehicle, it won't charge as fast on their hardware, or at least on some of their older hardware, but they're kind of being Tesla, they're already figuring out kind of ways to kind of hack it to make that work. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. There's a huge delta in experience around, I mean, it kind of goes back to this. So a great example is not just hardware, but also the software and kind of bring these two technologies together. I think it was Labor Day weekend. It was kind of a big travel weekend. I tried to avoid that, but unfortunately I was, I think road tripping down from Port Townsend or somewhere back to Bend and had to charge real quick. And in the car, it said, hey, this, not only is this charger full, but the next one actually has like 18 people. It now will tell you how many people are actually going to that charger. And so by it saying, not only was this charger full, but the next one I thought about going, there's going to be like 20 people headed that way. I was just like, you know what? I've got the range. I'm going to go to, I think the only reason I wanted to go that one was there's a coffee store I like, but I'd rather just get in and out than deal with waiting in line for coffee and all that stuff anyway. So I just looked in the map, went to the next one, and I was there, I don't even think 10 minutes, pretty much quick enough to use the bathroom, and I was on my way. And so that's also what plays into this, because I do think there are some really cool electric vehicles now that are great. There's really two ways to kind of hack the system. You can really be a super efficient vehicle, and you could be a really high charging vehicle, or the third is to be both. But then that's kind of at that variable that comes into play there is cost. So you got like Lucids and Taycans that have long range, the new Taycan that have longer range and charge really fast, but they're pretty expensive. And I think like you look at the Hyundai and Kia vehicles, they're pretty efficient and they really do charge fast.
All right, Chase, here's a snippy comment. Snippy on Facebook. It is snippy. At Panamaradon, I think.
Yep.
6860 warns us the term hybrid should not be used for any vehicle that does not plug in. And you should not be sloppy by using the abbreviation EV when you should specifically saying BEV and PHEV. I roll. What are your thoughts, Chase?
You know, I totally get that. I think that's definitely a remark that kind of comes from the more traditional, like battery electric vehicle driver. I mean, personally, I've got a classic Range Rover Defender. That's obviously just combustion. And then I've got an electric vehicle. And I personally think either or is better than a hybrid system. But I also know plenty of people that have gone with the hybrid or the plug-in hybrid because they kind of feel more comfortable to put a foot in the water instead of going fully in. And honestly, I think hybrid is a totally fine answer. It honestly just gets so confusing now, I think, for the consumer. And I think that's been one of the challenges for even selling these things is you have hybrid, plug-in hybrid, you're soon to have e-revs. I mean, there's all these different variants of kind of the same thing. And so I do think hybrid is actually applicable. It's like hybrid within the asterisk of like what type of hybrid it is. So it's been an interesting year.
You know, it's like the kind of person who their whole day is put off because the pool man didn't come. So
I mean, that's a lot of social media comments. I mean, even talking about hybrids, my favorite hybrid release this year is probably not one people would think. It's actually the new Porsche GTS, which obviously is not cheap. But essentially, they more or less got rid of turbo lag by putting an electric motor where the turbo goes. So I thought that was a really cool use of hybrid technology. Sure, it does slightly improve the MPG and that stuff, but in the end, it really delivers performance, which obviously an expensive and kind of premium brand like that's known for. And so I think there's some really cool use cases of hybrids. But yeah, I mean, it's such a wild landscape right now of like, yeah, you've got the Porsche way of doing it, which is, I think, as little of a hybrid, but a hybrid as it can be, to, yeah, some of these new things announced by like Ram with their new kind of e-rev thing where it almost works more like a locomotive where you'll have a battery and electric motors, and then there's an engine that kind of powers that. So, I mean, I think it's a very interesting time. I'm not convinced that long-term it won't just all go electric for light duty stuff, but it's definitely been fascinating. And it is getting a lot of people interested. And like I said, if it's a way to kind of get people feel more comfortable with it and they're buying vehicles, why not?
Well, we're going to go from snippy to downright angry now. So
Love it.
Michael Kiefer comments, there's no such thing as a green car.
Grr.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of caps lock on this comment.
Yeah. There's an exception of ammonia-fueled cars that emit zero carbon.
Stop shouting.
And Honda Guy reminds us EVs are far from green. So much high-sulfur diesel and coal was used to create them that most owners will never save enough energy to offset what it took to create the EV. They're always going backwards. Also, EVs create toxic waste.
Nice delivery.
Thank you. What do you say, Chase?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a common like Facebook or social media comment. And I think, like I said earlier, it is kind of fair. There's so much information out there that is either no longer relevant or just wrong. But I mean, one example is there's just been and I think the good and bad of this is we're seeing play out is so many of these traditional legacy auto companies were trying to push back on building electric vehicles. And so there was a lot of ad campaigns and stuff trying to push some of this information out. And now I think they are kind of dealing with their own, kind of making their own monster of trying to prove to people these things aren't so bad. And as such, some of the best information as to why that's not the case is really coming out from these legacy automakers, showing that in certain cases, maybe a battery electric vehicle might have higher carbon and other kind of toxic chemicals on the front end, but usually by around 50,000 miles, that gets canceled out. And let's be honest here. If you start working through this logically, it kind of falls apart. So if your concern is about environmental issues, then, well, why are we pumping oil out all the time? Why are we making vehicles anyway? That's not like a combustion vehicle isn't toxic or has its own issues. Talking about just all cars in general, usually the most toxic, traditionally, things about a car manufacturing plant are paint. And so that's a big reason, like chrome and a lot of these things have been kind of removed more and more over time because chromium, that hasn't been the case for a long time. But a lot of the stuff used in these paint and other chemicals were really toxic and had very negative environmental impacts.
Take that, Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we want to wrap up just a little bit, Chase. This is going to lead us to your predictions for 2025. Now, we asked you about predictions for last year. You suggested that automakers would be releasing lots of new, bigger battery packs to go with hybrids and EVs for better range and faster charging. How'd you do on your prediction?
That did happen, but not to the extent I was expecting. But I think that's a good thing in some ways because what we definitely saw were just vehicles being more efficient in general. There have been definitely some improvements in like battery energy density that we're seeing in some cars. But overall, I think a lot of the automakers have gotten the message that if you just make the cars more efficient, you can use less batteries or you can go farther on what you already have. So I would say it kind of came true. I think I was expecting there to be more vehicles going on the road that had better ranges. But yeah, we're now seeing a lot of entry vehicles in the mid 30s that can do 350 miles an hour or 350 miles an hour, 350 miles in range going down the highway at highway speeds, which is just wild. And really impressive. I mean, there's now a lot of vehicles beating their EPA range and stuff, which is just great for the consumer. And I think we'll definitely continue to see that. And I think there will be more hardware advances. But I think it's a win for the consumer.
Okay. Can I just say that Trish's prediction last year was there would be glove box microwaves.
Still a brilliant idea.
That's right.
I mean, come on, brilliant. A little popcorn while the car's driving itself down the freeway.
Yeah, I was going to say, with all these vehicles driving themselves, I think more amenities like that aren't a bad idea. I don't know how that helps with the efficiency, but it definitely makes the product stand out in a pretty crowded market right now.
There's car manufacturers listening right now. You can call my people. We will make this happen.
I like it.
It's still a really good idea.
It is.
Let's talk about 2025, Chase. What do you think? What do you think's happening for next year?
I think you should ask me that question after November 5th, and we'll reassess.
And that reminds me. I have a prediction. If Trump gets in, he and Elon are pals, right?
That's true.
So I think Elon will come out with a new hot air balloon called the Buffoon. That is only $200,000.
I have no idea how much a hot air balloon is today, so that could be great. That could be bad. I've got a feeling that's a little high, but
yeah, that might be.
Thanks, Chase. Thanks for sharing your brain with us today, and always the comments to the comments. We appreciate it.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. Thank you both. Looking forward to the next one.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
I feel like I say this after every interview with Chase. What a smarty pants.
Yeah.
He's so smart.
Mm-hmm.
He knows his stuff. A lot to unpack with this interview. Even Chase said it. I don't know how much you're going to use of this interview. We could make a couple episodes out of this.
It's true.
But I want to pull up a couple things for you, Dave. One of the things Chase said, if you really look at the numbers this year, what he said is the bigger story is how much the overall automotive market has shrunk this past year in 2024. Just your thoughts on that.
Right. It's not necessarily that people aren't buying or want to buy new or used vehicles. It's that the automakers tend to have these knee-jerk reactions. They will go all out. Like look at Ford with the Mach-E Mustang and the F-150
right?
Lightning. Is they ramp up and they go, we're going to make an extra 100,000 of these, and then they don't sell quite as quickly as they thought, and all of a sudden it's like, maybe we should just hedge our bets with hybrids, which everybody's buying hybrids right now.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. So they try to move as fast as they can, not always in the right direction, but, it's a big ship that they're steering.
Absolutely.
And so what I think he means is that you see a lot of change happening quickly based on these things. Like someone will say, EVs aren't moving as quickly, which isn't necessarily true.
Okay.
And then the whole ship turns.
Exactly.
And then, then it's harder to get an F-150 Lightning. There's only so many. And, so it changes on a dime.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because he was even saying in this interview, it was hard for him to keep up this year in 2024.
Right.
And I mentioned that as a newbie in this sort of automotive world, it was hard for me to keep up. It felt like there were new things coming out all the time. And he said, especially someone in the industry like Chase, who pays very close attention to this, and you've probably noticed this too, it's really hard to find the facts.
Right. That is correct. There's not a lot of real information out there. If you look for EVs and hybrids, you would think there'd be a lot more information, which is a great reason for us to keep doing these shows.
100%.
But you don't always know what the real story is. There's a lot of information out there that's fake or wrong, just wrong. Because if someone hears something, they go, oh, I can do something with that to get some eyes on, my podcast or my magazine article or whatever it is. But it isn't necessarily true. So you really have to watch. There's a great source of EV news from Skya that is generally pretty correct.
You really like that site.
Yeah. But the thing about that is they put a lot of stuff out there. You still have to weed through and look at, if there are 4 sources telling you the same thing, there's more of a chance that it's actually something that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of companies that are coming and going. There's a lot of technology that's coming and going. It's this floor that's moving constantly.
For sure.
And so it's hard for the consumer, because it's like, well, what do I do?
Well, and that's research 101, right? If you see an article, back it up with something else, with another article, with a podcast, GreenCars podcast. I mean, just throwing that out there. We're full of facts. We said that, right? We're fact-based.
Yeah.
And we are. That's absolutely true. Let's talk about some of the social media comments that we threw at Chase. One of them in particular stuck out. Someone mentioned about the destruction from the recent hurricanes, sending emergency squads and line repair trucks headed to these states that were all EVs, and they needed to be recharged so they could give medical attention and repair the electrical system. And Chase really had a lot to say about this, as you just heard in this interview. But what he says, what is getting really cool about electrification, a lot of these vehicles that we're getting, EVs, are now getting the software, right, that are preparing people, moving your emergency preparedness from being reactive to proactive. So cars are getting smarter.
Right.
Is that
Cars
safe
are getting
to say?
smarter, and we're hopefully getting smarter about climate change and how we better be watching out for these, very difficult storms and things like that. Tornadoes and hurricanes that we haven't seen the likes of, the ferocity of these things.
100%.
It's amazing. And with that in mind, I have a little story to tell you.
Please. I love story time with Dave.
Well, he was talking about the difficulties of EVs during the hurricanes, the recent hurricanes. We found this on Facebook.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Here we see a very muddy Rivian pickup truck. Its owner, Michael Kuzak of Asheville, North Carolina, was a diehard Tesla fan, but his surviving EV pickup truck made him a true Rivian convert. And get this, it started right up and he drove it away. As muddy and gunky as it was, the Rivian's ability as a generator let him keep food cold at the local rescue distribution center, making it an essential tool to help families affected by the storm.
Keyword there, essential.
Yeah.
It became an essential tool amidst all of this destruction.
Yeah, I just love that.
Absolutely incredible. One other thing I wanted to touch on within Chase's interview was a lot of the comments we see on social are, electric vehicles are bad for the environment, actually. We're saying that they're good, and then they're saying they're bad, they're toxic, the batteries, blah, blah, blah. Chase brought up a really interesting point. Most vehicles, the most toxic thing about car manufacturing is the plant or the paint. The paint.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
In the old days, it would have been the chrome.
Yeah.
And so you notice there are very few companies that do chrome plating anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have to re-chrome something, good luck finding a place to do it. And paint has changed dramatically.
Yes.
So now it's easier and it's less toxic to do these things.
Well, I appreciate, I love this segment we're doing, Keeping It Current with our guests, because they're not only getting to comment on these social media comments that we get, but they're kind of debunking a lot of them, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I really love this segment. And again, thanks to Chase for his brain in that interview. That was a lot of fun.
He's always great. And when it comes to the latest EVs, I think you actually have done some amazing things that maybe Chase hasn't done.
Oh, what would that be?
You test drove that really rare Polestar.
Mm-hmm, I sure did.
Let's watch it.
Okay.
If car reviews were fiction novels, this would be from the pages of a whimsical romance. Think Beauty and the Beast. And no, I am not the beauty in this story. The car is really a combination of both.
Well, gang, here we go again. Someone is trusting me with their beautiful, very fast electric vehicle to give it a little test ride for a couple of days. This is the 2023 Polestar 2 BST 270. BST stands for Beast. 270? There's only 270 of this vehicle in the entire world, about 45 to 50 in the United States. And I'm going to be behind the wheel for a couple of days. I don't even know. Am I going? Is it on? I think we're good.
Not a lot of these beasts roaming the planet, so yes, it sticks out, but in the best ways. Some of the words the manufacturer uses to describe this car: high-powered, limited edition, created to push the boundaries of electric performance. Man, I love an exclusive.
First impressions of this car: it's sexy, it's sleek, it's a little tight inside. My head's kind of hitting the top of the car over here, which is okay. Very vroom vroom sports car like. No start or stop button in the Polestar. As long as you have the key on you, when you get inside, the car starts. When you leave the vehicle, the car shuts off. Another first impression about this vehicle: really, you're gonna pull right in front of me. This is not even my car. Another first impression about this vehicle: very minimalistic inside. You have kind of the tablet screen, not a whole lot of buttons to push, which bums me out, but it's fine. I'll find some buttons to push. Love the sound of the blinker. Polestar 2. Polestar 2. Okay, that's enough.
Take a look at the interior. Major sports car vibes. It's cozy, which is a nice way of saying it's not particularly roomy. It's close, definitely a tighter ride, but 6'3" hubby said he fit just fine. The driver's seat does sit more like a recliner, and there's this little feature right in front, pull the handle forward for a bit more leg support. Oh, and I love the glass roof. And the fast hatch. Look, no hands.
The owner of this car, who's graciously letting me test it out for a couple of days, said there's one thing you have to do in the Polestar 2 BST 270, and that's go fast. Okay, yeah, we'll do. Done.
Okay, kids, time to go fast.
You'll feel that in your britches.
The ride height of the Polestar is 4.8 inches, an inch lower than other Polestar 2 models, which only enhances the aerodynamics. When you hit the accelerator, the car really does pull you forward and does not let up. With 476 horsepower, it goes from 0 to 60 in a cool 4.2 seconds. Hang on to your butts, y'all.
There are 3 different levels of the one-pedal driving system, which I have grown to love. Off, no braking power. Low, some braking effect, and then standard, high braking effect, which essentially when you take your foot off the accelerator, the car comes to a complete stop. So if you're a creeper or slow roller, this is not the feature for you. I kind of like it.
I could also feel a difference in the curves. I mean, look at these Pirellis. The back tires on this model are half an inch wider, giving more grip, more traction. That comes with a trade-off though. I can definitely feel all the bumps in the road.
Check this out, right in the front. Custom-made Öhlins 2-way adjustable front dampers and updated dual flow valve rear dampers. Now, I'm not 100% sure what that means. The car manufacturer says it takes handling to the next level, and car nerds seem to think it's super duper cool.
This car's beginnings were all about enthusiasm and freedom, also pushing the envelope a bit when it comes to performance. Designers and engineers nicknamed the one-off experimental car the Beast. Bigger wheels, lower stance, sleek lines. It certainly makes and leaves an impression. One of the chief engineers for Polestar says, quote, "This car is what happens when we're given the freedom to go beyond our limits." See what I mean? Romance novel. And this, the Polestar 2 BST 270, is the Studley main character.
That, may I say, was an awesome job.
Thank you. It was fun.
I love the whole Beauty and Beast thing, you know?
Well, it reminded me when I picked the car up, and again, thank you to the owner for letting me take it for a couple of days away from him, trusting me with this vehicle. When I picked it up, it just reminded me of that like kind of muscular character in a romance novel, right? It's, you know, it's Studley, it's fast. So that's where that came from. But yeah, it's a fun car.
Well, and it reminds me a little bit of the BMW sedans.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like you've got high performance, but it's also luxurious. You've got every bell and whistle known to man in this car.
Yes.
Pretty amazing.
I really appreciated the minimalistic look on the inside. You know, I love buttons. I like to press all the buttons in these cars that I review. There weren't a lot of buttons for me to push. So it's very sleek on the inside. And as I mentioned in the review, also very tight. This is definitely like a sports car vibe kind of car. And again, with that, while it's fast, it handles well, it was a bit bumpy. It's not the most it's not the comfiest ride, but that is the trade-off, I guess, when you want that kind of fast.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah.
Nice handling in this vehicle.
And you had me at Pirellis.
Look at these Pirellis.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm guessing they were P0s.
I love how you asking me. I don't know. I don't know Dave Nichols. I don't know. They were just pretty and shiny. And did you see the little rocket ship?
Yes.
On the car? Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
The owner's wife she put those on there. Because it is a rocket ship. It is a fast, fun car to drive. And I love the coolest feature about this car is how rare it is. 270 in the world, only 45 to 50 in the United States. That's pretty impressive.
I think we're going to get comments saying, where can I get those little rocket ships?
I agree. I agree. And if you see people in the Polestar 2, BST 270 and they're bouncing their head, their blinker's probably on 100%. I guarantee you, because that blinker provides a good beat.
It does.
A good beat while you're waiting for the light to turn. Yeah.
Yeah. Mine just goes.
Boring.
Yeah, that's not exciting.
You need to upgrade.
Well, and that wraps up another mind-melting episode of GreenCars, the podcast.
Mind-melting. We would love to hear from you. If you are watching these episodes, drop us a comment on our YouTube channel. If you're listening to this podcast, we would love for you to leave us a comment on our social media platforms. We get them all, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Absolutely.
Don't forget, when it comes to EVs, stay informed and stay charged. We'll see you next time. Follow us at GreenCars HQ. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Email us, thepodcast@greencars.com.